Welcome to Inspiring Salon Professionals, the podcast that allows every therapist, nail tech and stylist to level up, build their career and reach for their dreams. Each episode will be looking at a different area of the industry, and along the way I'll be chatting with salon owners, industry leaders and experts who'll be sharing their stories on how they achieved their goals, made their successes, all to inspire you in your business and career. I'm Sue Davies, your host, award-winning salon owner and industry professional. Welcome to Inspiring Salon Professionals. Hi there and welcome to this week's Inspiring Salon Professionals. A little bit late to the party because I was going to record last weekend and then we had some people coming to stay with us for the weekend and I didn't get the opportunity because I was having a nice time and sharing time with friends that we haven't seen for a long time. So I've spent this week working out, trying to think, then, I need to record. And what am I going to talk about this week? And I was going to do an interview, and then because I got caught up with other stuff last week, I didn't get the appointment booked in. And this week I've been watching some guys that we've had clearing our front garden and changing our hedge line to a fence. And it's been a week where I've been thinking a lot about boundaries, and so we're having a huge stretch. I think it's something like, in total, something like 40 metres of Leylandii removed from around our front garden and into the side of our property on the lane that we live on. And it's been really, really strange. They started taking them down on Monday. Bear in mind, I live in a bungalow, opposite bungalows. And they were probably, 12 foot high Leylandii, conifer fir trees at the front of our property. So we've lived here for 18 months, 20 months, something like that. And in all that time, we've never seen the houses opposite us. And it's kind of been like a bit of a metaphor for everything that is going on in my world at the moment. And literally this week, the trees came down and my view was allowed to open and see something it hadn't seen. Obviously, I drive down that road and I see those houses every day. But actually having a more open mind, because you have a more open perspective of the world, is really quite interesting. And it's kind of just made me think a lot. I've had a whole week of thinking about boundaries and what I'm putting in place and what's going to be going forward in my world and all that kind of stuff. And so this is literally it's going to be a really, really short podcast just to question and to just encourage you to question where your boundaries lie. And this really is a big boundary question that we've been talking about with our house, because, we're taking down a big hedge line of Leylandii, and there really is a question over where is actually our boundary line? And if we get it slightly wrong, we could be encroaching on council property because we've got a verge outside our house. That doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the local council. And so we have had a bit of a conversation about, where does that sit? Do we have to, how careful do we have to be? How mindful do we have to be that we're not encroaching on somebody else's boundary? And that they're not, we're not going to allow them to encroach on our boundary. And I think sometimes we have to remember, this is what I thought this morning, I'm going to just do a quick podcast just to have a quick mind dump more than anything about the boundaries that we all allow to be encroached upon. And I know that over my career, from when I first started work, even as a kid, we allow people to push us into places that we aren't so comfortable. And these Leylandii trees have been pushing into our garden and making it quite uncomfortable for our garden because it's, they're taking over the lawn, killing a lot of stuff around it. And I think that when we have things in our life that are pushing our boundaries, it starts to have that impact as well, and it starts to kill the things that are beautiful around it. And so there's going to be, I just wanted to kind of come on and just say that we don't have to tolerate that. We can say no. And I love a Leylandii has been quoted as saying, and I've heard her say this so many times, you have to remember, no is a sentence. And I think that this week, with all of these boundaries changing, no has been a sentence on my garden. It's been a sentence in my life. And I think that we just need to recognise when it's time to say no. So if you've got stuff going on in your world at the moment, in your business, if you've got clients that are pushing your cancellation policy, if you've got clients that are always late, whatever the thing is where people are pushing your boundaries, if it makes you uncomfortable, say no. If it makes your gut scream, say no. You are allowed to. You don't have to go along with whatever the other people are saying or the other person is saying, or whatever that boundary is that's being pushed, that's making you have that discomfort. There's a great book that I read by a guy called Gavin de Beck, I think his name is, called The Gift of Fear. And it's a really, really amazing book. I heard about it on Clubhouse when we were in lockdown and Clubhouse was a thing. On one morning I was listening to the I can't think what it was like the Entrepreneurs Breakfast Club or something like that. And there was always 7-figure business owners on there, giving their advice and information free kind of thing to whoever was listening. It was a really amazing opportunity actually to sort of sit in the space of some of these huge industry leaders from across the globe. It was quite something actually, and to quite kind of miss Clubhouse just a little bit. But that morning, someone mentioned this book, and it was one of a life-changing book. And I went off and I bought it because I thought, if all these people have read it, so often we go and buy these books because so-and-so's recommended it. So I bought this book and it sat on my reading pile, because I always have a reading pile. Sat there for ages and ages. And last year I picked it up and read it. And it is a life-changing book. Just the first chapter, especially for a female, is life-chinging. But one of the things the book told me was that your gut will never serve you wrong, ever. And when your gut's telling you to run or to react, when fight off, to do your fight or flight, or to listen, then you should listen to your gut. And that book, seriously, if you're listening, go and get this book. It feels like a really odd book to read as a business book because it's all about security, really, and about your personal safety and your business safety and that kind of stuff. It's quite a peculiar book to read as a book to promote your business mind. But the key to it is about listening to your gut. And there's many interesting anecdotes in there and stories where he talks about the people that he's worked with who have come to him to ask what they could have done. Why did this happen? And all of them, they had life-changing decisions and life-changing moments where they had their gut screaming at them to do something and they ignored it. And he was just explaining to them that, if you look at all these different things, you're actually saying that you notice this, and this. And that's your subconscious calling out to you to not stay in that situation and to do something to change it. And sorry, my dog, I don't know if you can hear it. My dog's moving around and doing lots of mooching today. Anyway, and I'm not going to edit any of this out because I was just coming on to just sit and just do a quick sort of 10, 15 minutes or something talking about this. But that book gave me an insight into what I should be considering in my life and my business and lots of in my relationships, all different sorts of things. But if you ever second guess yourself or you doubt yourself, go and buy this book, because it will give you a different point of view on how your subconscious works. And in actual fact, it kind of leads on, is something I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going back into learning in a big way in the next couple of months. And I'm going to be doing something. I won't share yet because I'm yet to start the process. So I just want to make sure that I'm there. But it's all about subconscious abilities, really, and how that impacts on our world. And so that's going to be a really, really interesting journey for me, because I love this kind of stuff. I love how the brain works, and I love how we ignore so often. And what I'm going to be doing is about how you capture that stuff you ignore and actually work on it, and it help you move forward. So there's going to be lots and lots of changes coming up for me, because I've made a decision I'm going to be branching out into new directions. The podcast is going to stay where it is, but I think for me personally, it's like time for me. I've sort of sat since I moved to Norfolk. I've been in this kind of limbo of not really knowing what I was going to be doing, and now I know what I'm going to be doing. So it's going to be a case of like, watch this space. But really today was just about coming on just to talk about the boundaries and just making sure you really understand how, when you allow, because this is the thing, we allow our boundaries to bend, we allow our boundaries to be blurred, and we allow outside influences to change how we deal with our own worlds. And we need to remember that actually we do have the power to say no. We do have the power to say, this is not how I want to operate. And we need to sometimes just find that voice to say that I'm making changes. And this is how my future lies. Whilst I've been in this reflective mode, because I think all the big events and stuff that we've had recently have led to like a near burnout, really. It's been a really intense few months. And so I have been taking time out, doing self-care and making sure that I'm looking after myself and I've rested properly, and that I'm allowing my mind space to just be, and to see what thoughts come up and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I was doing, I was revisiting, I found a notebook that I started writing in, and I'll do this quite often. I think I'm gonna journal, and I think at the time I was in a coaching group where we would, and it was with a lovely lady called Sarah Burton, who now has a program called Start Over, I think it's called, and she was at the time doing a beta of this coaching program called Shift, and we were encouraged to kind of write as part of that process. And so I found the lovely notebook that I started writing, and typical of me, I only wrote in it once. But when I went back to it and I found this notebook and was like, oh, what did I write in here? I obviously didn't use it enough, and I didn't even remember what I'd written in it. But when I opened it, it was at a point in January 2023. And within that, and so much of what I was writing was that I did need stuff to shift. And in there, I'd made the decision that morning that I was going to write the journal, following a meeting that we'd all been to, that was where we were kind of talking about all the different things we needed to shift. And I'd had this kind of epiphany that I'd been waiting for things. And it was, you just get those light bulb moments. And again, it comes back to boundaries, because I'd allowed all these other people to be controlling what I was doing with my time, because I was literally waiting. My husband was working down in London. He still is working down in London, which was not the plan when we moved to Norfolk. And fortunately, it's about to end, so that we can begin our life up here properly. But we've been in this kind of weird hiatus for 18 months that we hadn't really planned and didn't engineer. But, again, our boundaries had to shift and change. And I ended up sort of in this place of waiting for him to stop doing that. And when I was going back over this, in this moment of reflection the other day, I realised this list of all the things I was waiting for, some of which I'd sorted. I needed to lose weight. I needed to get fitter. I've done that. I've lost 3 stone, and I've got fitter. I walk my dogs every day in the forest. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll quite often see me my photos of me wandering around the forest at sunset, because I tend to go that kind of time of day. And it's part of my self-care. It's part of my mindfulness. And I really sometimes think I should be listening to podcasts and doing things like that when I walk, but I tend not to. And I tend to just literally walk and just take in the sights and sounds and smells and all the rest of it that I experience when I'm out doing that walk, because otherwise it wouldn't be being very mindful. So I try to make sure there's a space where I have usually about half an hour every day just walking with the dogs. But some of the other stuff on there, I realised that I'm still waiting. And it's been a really interesting week of revisiting why I'm waiting and all that kind of stuff. And much like I did last year, in the January, I decided that waiting is done. And when none of us should be held in a place of waiting by other people, or by other events. If it's something that we have some control over, we can take the control. And so I just really wanted to kind of share that thought process. And a lot of this is like really my mind wandering and musings this morning as I'm recording this, because I know if I'm experiencing these moments of waiting, then there's going to be a lot of other people that are experiencing the waiting too. And it could be that you are waiting for the recession to stop, or for the economy to improve, or for the regulations to change in the industry. And that waiting brings with it trepidation, it brings with it fear, it brings with it stagnation, it brings with it an awful lot of things that are negative in our lives and that don't necessarily fit with the way that we want our worlds to be. We do have the opportunity to change the pathway that we're on. We have the opportunity to jump. And you will have seen me many times over the years possibly talk about Steve Harvey's book, Jump. It's a book that resonates so hugely with me at so many different points in my career over the last probably 10 years or so. And it is all about that kind of like, sometimes you just have to jump. When you know what your goal is, and if the way that you're getting to your goal at the moment isn't the right pathway, and it's filled with obstacles and challenges and things that aren't making your goals possible, you have to jump. You have to make a change and you have to make a difference. And I think that the message that Steve Harvey gives, and the message that Gavin DeBeck give, this whole thing about, sometimes you are going to feel the fear, and you have to kind of push through it, and you have to make that decision to take the leap and to basically take flight and jump. Ask yourself what in your business at the moment, or in your personal life even, what is it that's making your gut resonate and making your gut say, whoa, hang on a minute. What is there in your world that's doing that? And sit down, break it down, take some time out. We've got Easter weekend, and if you're not busy in your business, take some time out. And if you have those issues ongoing, work out what you can do about them. If we just take the regulatory changes that are coming as an example, this is something that's out of our control. These are changes that are going to be made by government and by their agencies to change our industry and to regulate our industry at the upper levels of service. So it will be affecting invasive treatments that we perform as therapists, is probably the easiest way to explain it. This is causing ripple effects for so many people. There's nothing you can do to change the outcome of the regulation. That is going to be whatever the government chooses it to be. But what you can choose is how you react to it. And you can choose whether you sit in a place of fear, or whether you sit in a place of proaction and you actually do something to make that pathway into the new regulation easier. At the moment, there's not really very much you can do, because regulation, no one knows what it looks like yet. But you can kind of start to think about how you're going to manage the situation once those regulations come in. What does that look like? What can you put in place? You know that there's going to be key information that you need to look at. So do you need to look at whether you've got your level 4, level 5 qualifications that are regulated qualifications? That's probably a given that, if you're providing those services, you're going to need that, and as are your team. Do you need to look at your insurance? Do you need to look at the licensing in your area? Is it, this is going to be a national guideline. And something you do need to consider is, are you going to look at things like your health and safety and your risk assessments and that kind of stuff? And it's something that I've seen on Facebook recently, and this morning, in fact, with a friend of mine, Sam Blake, who covers health, safety and wellbeing in the industry. And, and she's had a couple of DMs from people that are receiving like scaremongering calls from some large companies that are basically putting the fear of God into people, because do you know what's coming, and have you got this done, and have you got that done? People are terrified, and that's not what a company should be doing. Invoking fear in someone is not a good sales technique, and if you are on the end of that currently, or you know anybody that is, there's ways of dealing with that. I went back and posted back to Sam just to say, there's still things like business telephone preference service, and if you're registered, people are phoning you, they're cold calling you. They're supposed to be checking that first, or they used to have to. This may be outdated information. But if you are receiving calls that are like this and you're feeling threatened or scared or vulnerable, then just go and check. Go on the ICO website, on the Information Commissioner Office's website, and just go and check. Do a search for telephone preference service. I'm virtually certain it still exists, and it's a way of eliminating that. And you can report people if they. The rule was always. Because back before I was in this industry, I used to work in as a customer care agent for Vodafone, doing evenings just to fit around the kids and stuff. And one of the things that we had to be very mindful of was all of this kind of, we weren't an outbound call centre, but it made me very, very aware of like the how we had to protect our customers' data and stuff like that. And that was like going back like 25 years. So. And I became very aware of what the telephone preference service was, and you can opt into it as a consumer, so for your household, but you can also, I discovered later, opt into it as a business. And I'm sure that those things are still there. I know they were, and I was still using them when I had my salon. So go and look at that if you're experiencing that kind of those challenging phone calls. But the one thing I'd add here is that, when you've got these huge health and safety companies, and like I'm sure we all know who they are that want you to sign up and pay X amount per month and whatever, and then they're still going to charge you to do things anyway. Look within our industry, we have a resource in Sam Blake that is like nobody else. And yeah, she's a big geek, and yeah, she gets quite technical, but do you know what? She really does know her stuff, and more importantly, she really knows our industry. Sam is an old school therapist, been through every kind of therapy job you can think of, through management, through into education. She's a degree level educator, and she's chosen to specialise in health and safety and wellbeing and providing a safe workspace within our industry. So for goodness sake, go out and use her. And if you're listening to this at the point of recording or shortly after, she's about to have an amazing opportunity for everyone to get involved called Mind the Gap. So, and if you haven't found it, go search it. Sorry, digressing, but back to what I was saying after I went into a plug for Sam, is that, we have boundaries that we can put in place with this stuff. We don't have to let this cause us stress on a daily basis. We can say, actually, no, this is coming. We don't know when, but it's going to be a good few months down the road. And in the meantime, I can look at what I can do. I can look at what I have available to me now as resources and that I can act upon now. And the only thing at this point really that we can definitely act upon is knowing that changes are going to come, that changes are likely going to include high level qualifications. And that means that you are going to have to assess how your business operates in a slightly different way. But all of those things are not a bad thing to be looking at anyway. So, look at how you can elevate what you do, how you can elevate your qualifications, how you can elevate your team's skill base, how you can elevate the safety practices within your salon. Be ready. Part of what I'm looking at the moment is about this whole, the whole thought process behind what makes a great salon. And that is being ready at any point for any scenario. And if you're operating your business effectively, efficiently, with standards, with skills that are relevant and practicable for your client base, if you're doing all of those things, you should be ready. You should be ready for someone to walk into your business tomorrow and say, have you got all your ducks in a row? And if you haven't, then you should be operating to make sure that those things are there. And if they aren't, then you need to make a list and start working through them. And that's irrelevant of whether regulation is coming or not. We should be working at that kind of level anyway. So just look at the things that you've got. Look at the boundaries that are being pushed at the moment and why they're being pushed. Look at who's pushing them, looking at what you're allowing and what you're saying no to already. Just go and have a bit of an assessment on your boundaries, and that's on your time, your work-life balance. There's so many different areas of where boundaries can be impacted. So just question yourself. Just take 10 minutes out, sit quietly with a cup of tea, look out at the world around you and let your mind muse on where your boundaries are being affected, and just make a little note of it. Just think about doing something different this weekend. That's all I'm suggesting. Anyway, I have gone on for longer than I'd intended, and I just was really coming on just to sort of wax lyrical a little bit, because this has been really big in my week this week, with my trees coming down, and we're only having instead of having like a 12-foot tree, we've now got a 4-foot fence, which means that I've got a completely open view. And that open view sometimes I think it just was like such a metaphor that I thought of this morning, that now I can see the world more clearly. And I think sometimes we just need to take the opportunity to see the world a little bit more clearly and in a more positive way for us. So that's it. Bye for now. See you next time. Thank you for listening to Inspiring Salon Professionals. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review and share with fellow industry professionals that you think may enjoy the show. Links and further information can be found on the show notes or on my website www.suedavies.org. Here you can also find some downloadable free guides that you may find of use. You can also hear from me and join the Inspiring Salon Professionals community on my Facebook group. Thanks again and see you next time. Bye for now.